Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Hope everybody is doing well and enjoying our beautiful hot weather. Um, Today, usually I always say we never talk about politics. Today, we're going to be talking politics a little bit, but I think not in the way that you're expecting. They say, somebody once said, I don't like political jokes. I've seen too many of them be elected. So again, like I said, we're going to be talking politics today. And, what we see is it's something that I've a little bit of pet peeve of mine, to see the divide, to see the extremes that people have become and the extremes that people go, if you want to say, to their side of whatever political issue is on the table. It's always become an us versus them. Those that have their eyes open versus the others that have their eyes closed. And it's such an extreme divide, down to the point that I've seen friendships and family relations broken over these issues. How do we avoid this extreme? And in a sense, if it's not good in the extreme, probably isn't good in the small case as well. How do we avoid this partisan thinking? I recognize that we have partisan thinking. Now, everything in life, everything in our life, everything that happens, we can get guidance from the Torah. And from the Torah, it says we should live with the times, and it's not a reference to Time magazine or New York Times. It means from the local, our current Torah portion. So what kind of guidance can we get from this week's Torah portion, particularly on this issue? And this week's Torah portion is Parshas Pinchas. So we have a very fascinating story in Parshas Pinchas. It's about the story about the daughters of Tzlafchad. If you know them off the top of your head, email me and get a prize. Don't know what it is. Just kidding. There's a joke that they say, what was the name of the father of the daughters of Tzlafchad? A little dry humor joke. It was Tzlafchad, obviously. But what was the story? The story about the daughters of Tzlafchad is that Tzlafchad had only daughters, and they were dealing with the dividing of the land of Israel, how the land would be divided. And what happened was that the dividing of the land was done by the adult males within each family. And what happened here was that Tzlafchad died. He died many years earlier, and he only had daughters. And what happened was that ended up being that the daughters didn't get a share in the land. So the daughters of Tzlafchad come to Moses, and they tell Moses, listen, we got a situation. What's the situation? Avinu meis bamidbar, our father died in the desert. And they go on to say, V'hu lo haya ba'dat Korach. And he wasn't part of the congregation of Korach that rebelled against Moses. Ki bechet omes, he died for his own sin. And just as a sidebar, nothing to do with our story, the Torah tells us why did he die. There's a famous story about a man who went out after they got the commandment of Shabbat. He went out and he gathered wood on Shabbat. They say he did it to show what the punishment would be, that it's serious stuff and you do get punished for it. Anyway, so they say that he died for his own sin, but he wasn't part of Korach. I'm also going to see why did they mention that footnote to the story. Anyways, so what happens is, so they come to Moses, and Moses says, you know what? I don't know what to do. This is a troubling question. I don't know what to do. And their question was, Lama Nigar, why should we miss out and not have a share because our father had no sons and he passed away many years ago? And Moses turns around. Moses says, Moses' response to them was, this is too difficult for me to answer. I need to phone a friend. I need to use a lifeline. And he turns to God and he asks God, what should I respond to them? And God says, Cain benos tlafchos dovers, they're right. And they set the rules from then on, first of all about them, and then for all future generations, that if a man dies and he has no sons, then a section of his father's brother's properties from amongst that tribe should also go to the daughters as well. But we got to ask ourselves a question. We're talking about Moses. Moses is known as Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the one that is our teacher. He's the one that answered all the difficult questions. He's been spending 40 years in the desert here answering any difficult question. He was the solving of all legal problems, any questions about Torah law. Everybody went to Moses, and all of a sudden here, he's stumped. You know, they have the stump the rabbi, stump Moses. When some people don't know what to do, they go to the website, Ask Moses. So that's the concept of you'll get your answer. Moses has the answer to everything. Why all of a sudden here, Moses does not have the answer and he needs to go to God, which is really a logical response that if there's no sons, it should go to the daughter. So the answer is that there's a concept called manufactured unity. Unity is a great thing. Everybody thinking alike and everybody, but sometimes there's a concept called manufactured unity or manufactured loyalty, that there's a reason that brings us together and in common. That is not really real in a sense, but it's manufactured. It's manufactured, but it's there. Once it happens, that unity is there. You see, the Torah tells us, one of the laws in the Torah is that you shall not take a bribe. And the word that it uses, lo sikach shochad, you shouldn't take a bribe. What happens when you take a bribe? The Torah says, ki hashochad ya'aver einei chachamim. Shochad, a bribe, will blind the eyes of the wise. Now it's interesting also the language. It doesn't say here that people will become corrupt. It doesn't say they will not be wise. They're still wise, but they become blinded. Why do they become blinded? Because actually the word shochad in biblical Hebrew, it says, the commentaries say, it says shehu chad. When somebody bribes you, you become one with that person. There's a unity, a manufactured unity that's created. What's the problem with becoming one? The problem with becoming one is that one becomes subjective and one cannot be any more objective. A person cannot be objective to themselves. And what happens is when you take a bribe, and there's many stories in the Talmud that tells the stories about, you know, what happened when somebody took a bribe, and there's actually a famous story about Rabbi Shmuel that somebody came and brought him the bikurim, the first fruits that had to be brought, and they brought it to Rabbi Shmuel, who was a Kohen, and he was deserving of it, but they brought it a day earlier, and he was also supposed to be judging a case for them. And when he realized that, you know, they usually brought it on Friday, this time they brought it Thursday. So why'd you bring it Thursday? He says, oh, because we're supposed to be in court in front of you. So I figured we'll bring it a day earlier. We'll come today and bring it with us today. And he says, well, if that's the case, I cannot judge your case. And he appointed a different rabbi to handle their case. But he figured he's going to listen in on the case. And when he listened in on the case, he kept thinking to himself, you know, this fellow could make a better argument. And why doesn't he say that? It'll benefit him so. And after a while, he caught himself and he realized that just the idea that the fellow was bringing him something, which was actually a payment of rent that he had to bring him, and he says he was bringing it to him. He was bringing him something that was owed to him, and he just does the idea that he brought it a day earlier. And as a matter of fact, Rabbi Shmuel didn't even take it, but the fellow just offered it. It affected Rabbi Shmuel's thinking, that he was thinking for this person and with this person. That's what bribery does. And he didn't even take the bribe. So this is a similar concept that happens with partisan. Partisan politics doesn't even make sense. There's no way. What happens is with partisan politics, we don't even really discuss the issues. It's all about my side, whatever side you on. I'm not picking one side over the other. Whatever side it's about my side. And therefore, we're not even discussing the issues. Now, logically, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that my guy is always right. My pundit that I like is always correct on every issue, and the other one is so wrong and doesn't know what they're talking about. It's similar to sports. It happens when you're a real diehard sports fan. If you're a Yankee fan and you go to Boston and you're in Fenway Park and the Yankees are playing against the Red Sox, if there's a call against the Yankee, the umpire is always 100% wrong. It's not going to say, oh, you know what, that was a good call. He's wrong. He's wrong because it's against my side. So that can't really be. And we have to realize that. Because if we go back to the story with Moses, what was the problem with Moses? Why couldn't Moses rule? Because you know what? They threw in a line. And they threw in a line, what they were saying was, you know what, by the way, Moses, our dad liked you. Our dad was not part of the rebellion that was against you. He was not with Korah, which went against you. So that became a bias. And Moses says, just in words, and really this had no effect. The fact that this story with Korah happened 30 years earlier, more than 30 years earlier. And there was nothing to gain or lose with the fact now that story was gone, has been, and it had nothing to do. But since there was a mention, which made them be, let's say, we're on the same side, so to say, Moses says he couldn't rule. He realized he can't be objective. And who are we talking about? We're talking about Moses. Moses, the Torah tells us, Moshe emes v'saras emes. Moses is truth and his Torah is truth. There's nobody that's smarter than Moses. What happens is, when we become biased, we become blinded. Now, it's interesting, a blinded person, it's not that they don't want to see, it's they can't see. Our brains become blinded, and like I said, it has nothing to do with smart. Nobody's smarter than Moses. Nobody suspects Moses is not wanting the truth. It's just that it blinds the eyes of the wise. They're still wise. And as a matter of fact, the more wise you are, the more smart you are, the more your brain actually gets more entrenched and more, it actually goes so much quicker to the point where it can't be objective anymore. There's an idea called confirmation bias or affirmation bias. The more we think about it, the more we believe in what we are thinking, and we think that that is right, and we sort of get pulled in. We become so more entrenched. We become more self-righteous, more indigent, more intolerant of the other person. Now, by the way, this has nothing to, not just with politics. I'm mentioning politics because that is a hot button currently, but you even see it in relationships. Whenever there is, issues in relationships and we get divided between sides, whether it's employee, employer, friends, family relationships, once you create sides and the issue becomes which side is winning, my side, your side, you're with me, you're against me, and everything gets divided rather than on the issue, that is a problem. And that is actually, we become blinded and we can't really see it. And what's the solution? Torah has a solution. These weeks we're studying Pirkei Avos, ethics of our fathers. One of the things that we learned recently in one of our classes is the idea of a Selech Harav. Every person needs to have a guide, a mentor, somebody outside of you that you can run by. How's my thinking? How's it going? The mentor doesn't have to be smarter than you, doesn't have to be more knowledgeable. The only thing that they have that you don't have is that they're not you. And therefore, they can be objective. And that is an important thing, that it really helps us and it can cure us. A person, no matter how smart they are, they cannot do it themselves. And it's important that you have to get outside of your thinking and ask somebody else to bounce it off when there's an issue, to be able to really get down to the truth and know when we have to go. So if Moses, our lesson that we can walk away from that which, this issue from this week's Torah portion is that we should, aseh l'charav. When it comes to issues, we need to get ourselves, it can be a friend, it could be your rabbi, it could be anybody outside of you that has your best interests at stake, and somebody, even Moses, needed to be able to turn to God for this one because he realized that he was not able to be objective anymore. And we do well, first of all, for us to realize and to know that our way of thinking is only our way of thinking, and we are subjective to our own way of thinking, and to be able to seek, to be able to bring true unity, and to be able to respect the other person's idea, the other person's issues, and realize and recognize that's the only way to be able to get to the truth and respect the differences, and to be able to seek out the truth and realize that truth is we have so much more in common than we have that divides us. And if we could focus on that which we have more in common, ein keli machzik bracha kemo hashalom, there's no vessel that can bring us the greatest blessings as the peace and as harmony. Let us hope that we should be able to bring true peace, true harmony. First, we have to start within our own selves, within our congregations, within our community, and from there we should be able to spread it to everybody else and bring true unity. And let us hope that that should bring the greatest blessing and all blessings of all, that we should merit the ultimate time of peace with the coming of Mashiach. May it be speedily in our days. Amen. Shabbat Shalom and good Shabbos.